Hi, friends, and thank you for joining us for Care Team Chronicles. Today, we are so lucky to again have Dr. Susan Taylor here with us to help us recognize National Wellness Month by discussing anxiety. We are following up from our previous episode in June titled Feeling Good Matters, Nourish Your Body, Balance Your Mind. If you missed it, make sure to check it out on our Facebook saved videos or on our YouTube channel. Dr. Taylor, is the author of Feeling Good Matters, the Yoga of Mind, Medicine, and Healing. Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for again being here with us to share your wisdom with our community.
Thanks, Sasha. You know, I was pretty happy seeing the feedback that we got from the last episode that we did. And so it encouraged me that there's people that are interested in really learning other methods for dealing with any kind of anxiety or any kind of emotional, let's say, disturbance that may be happening, especially now, since everybody's been locked down.
Yes, absolutely. And it was so well received. And we did have a lot of follow up with people talking about their own wellness, thinking about their own wellness in a new way, which is very encouraging.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah.
I think now's the time, though.
Right.
We're down enough to say we have to really start looking at this whole concept of wellness, but wellness of mind, you know. So that's really that's where it all starts.
Absolutely. And once again, just as last time, I could go on and on with quotes and parts from the book and just in general talking about wellness, but I'm going to try my best to stay specific and talk about anxiety and how it just has a way of trapping us and it just gets deep inside and it's hard to get rid of. And you have this great quote for those who suffer and they just want to feel good. So you have this great quote that you say, "We must produce a foundation of habits that will sustain us in our resolve to feel good. If we're to discard how we feel and move to what we can become, we must forge new habits," which is great. And of course, I think we would all love to forge new habits, but what's a practical way we could go about doing that?
First, let's discuss what's the difference between you and I. We both have hands, we both have a head. I'm about a few decades older than you, but we have different habits. We're defined by our habits, and it's our, let's look at not our habits, there's physical habits, of course, but our habits of thinking. One of the core habits that we all have to address, and any program that I've ever taught starts with our breath. You know, without breath, and you, I don't know if you heard my last episode yesterday on the podcast when I spoke about when breath ceases, we die. And yet we ignore it. And that's the clue, that's the actual key to any type of disturbance that happens within our physical body or as well as our mental body or emotional body. And so when we learn how to address our breath, because the breath and mind go hand in hand, when the breath comes in contact with the mind, it's the link between the mind and the body, and the mind and body are one via breath. When the breath leaves, we die. When the breath enters, we live. You know, you could put somebody on a respirator and after they've expired, and they're not going to be alive. So the breath carries a special energetic force. And when we learn to use this muscle called the diaphragm to breathe, we actually stimulate all the neuroreceptors in the body. So our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, or for people that aren't familiar with those words, our nervous system in general comes back into balance.
Yes.
So when you're anxious, what's the first thing you do? We hold our breath.
Right.
And when we hold our breath, we hold that moment of fear or anxiety or whatever we want to call it. So when we practice to be, you know, people talk about being in the present moment, having compassion. You can't have any of those if you're not in line with the moment of the breath. So we use breath as the habit. We create the habit of breathing using the diaphragm, using that muscle. And once we create that habit, things just go smooth sailing. So we do 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes we start. And there are certain poses that we teach where you've taken yoga asana classes where, you know, makarasana, the crocodile pose we use, and then we learn on the back. And just practicing those when we get in and get out of bed, for those that maybe have too busy a life to do it in the middle of the day or are not attending classes, we can actually establish a habit. And that habit is developed, then you start feeling that confidence.
Mhm.
Even being a seasoned practitioner for over 40 years, I'm giving away my ancientness right now, but being a practitioner, I still do basic diaphragmatic breathing practices, sandbag breathing practices, and all those practices that produce stability and calmness in mind. And especially now, because even the best of the best in training, we could get a little ditzy right now off our rocker, just
Mhm.
really be taken out of our orbit with all the things that are going on in the world. So
Right.
it's not that anything's wrong with anyone. It's how do we bring it back? So let's do it together.
Mhm.
Let's just do practices where we could train our own mind, get back control. Like I said, catch your breath.
Right.
Well,
I love that
yeah.
title of it too. Feel out of control, catch your breath.
Well, what does it mean? We've lost control. That's why we say catch your breath. We've lost control of what? Our mind is out there instead of being back home within us.
Mhm.
And when I do live classes, people ask me to do live classes every week just
Mhm.
so they have that containerizing. And you can do it on your own. It's much easier though as humans to come together.
Mhm.
And that's the misfortune and yet fortune. So maybe we can recognize that we need that. But the misfortune is that people are isolating themselves so much now that I think it's also causing anxiety. Human beings are meant to be with each other, to see the expression on the face,
Mhm.
to see a smile, to say, hey, hello.
Yes.
And so that's why the four-leggeds that are roaming out there, we were talking about that this week. We have
Right.
a 400% increase in dog sales, and
Yeah.
people are just churning out puppies, and people are buying them because people want that interaction. I'm
Yeah.
not
We
telling anyone to go out
that
and buy dogs right now, please.
sense of- right. Yes. We need that sense of community. We need that
Yes.
togetherness. That is good.
And so let's create the habit back to breath because I can go off on a tangent as we can both do that. Let's talk about breath. Catch your breath. When you catch your breath, you take control of your mind. And
Mhm.
that's the key. We do training for the mind. The
Yes.
mind's an instrument, right? I mean, it's an instrument. You wouldn't, if you've ever gone to see an orchestra, I've used this as an example. What do they do between sets or between concertos or whatever? They tune up their violin, the viola, they just tune up their strings
Mhm.
constantly. We run out of the house without even tuning up our mind. How can we tune up our mind? 5 minutes of breath awareness practice in the morning, 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. It's that simple. I would guarantee results.
Yes. Well, that's good. Yeah. Tune up our insides by connecting to our breath. So, to
Exactly.
speak on another part that we could control, you talk about gut health and how it might be possible to make our bodies more resilient to stress by considering the gut and addressing our diet. So, can you speak to that a little bit?
I could speak to anything right now and keep going on and on. So when we talk about our gut, it's old news now, but there's a communication between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut, the biocommunication that takes place. It's bidirectional. It goes in both directions. People never look at food stress. I did a podcast, I don't know what episode I did on that, but where I talked about food stress. We're putting things in our body, in some cases that aren't even food.
Mhm.
And the chemicals that are created, even if you're even doing, let's say if you're doing pure organic food,
Mhm.
you're still only getting, you're probably only 20% clean because the food is grown in soils that don't have certain biomes, right? The biome is the bacteria. In the soil is what's transferred to the plant, which then is transferred to our neurotransmitters. I'm making it simplified. It's the shikimate pathway. But anyway, when that gets destroyed, when we're spraying pesticides and bug control, and I'm using bug very loosely here,
Mhm.
what we do with the fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, all of those, what we're doing is we're actually destroying the health of the plant. It might appear that the plant is surviving, but we destroy the immune system of the plant So we see it up and running, but it doesn't have the immune system. In fact, they don't even reproduce after so many generations. They stop reproducing.
Oh, really?
So so when we take that food in, that food is not supplying the essential nutrients that we need. That's why I always talk about, with the Center for Meditation Science, people say just meditation. No, but there's also lifestyle habits that we could include. People want to do meditation now, it's on the increase. But unless you know how to breathe correctly and have a proper diet, meditation is next to impossible. Because where does the mind want to go? It wants to run around. The mind doesn't want to come back home. How could it come back home if the food wasn't clean, if there's not enough sleep, or those kinds of things? So food stress is a very real phenomena. When I work with people, I work with a lot of people. My background was in psychiatry at one time, and I do work with people that are really wanting to solve the issues of why are they feeling anxious. We could take substances to help us, but we also have to get to the root cause, root it up, and restore what's already within us that we could heal ourselves. It's all about that. I mean, that's a little bit roundabout, but we can't be eating foods, and there's allergy, right? We have casein sensitivity now for milk products and gluten sensitivity. I'm not quite sure it's gluten per se. It's what we've done to the wheat. It's the sprays and how they're trying to get extra harvesting. And those chemicals, the body just can't handle it anymore. And if it is gluten, because there are people that are gluten sensitive, there's no doubt about that. But it's how can we build that digestive fire? How can we build ourselves up again so that we can learn to digest? It's a whole new world now. We have to be able to forage a non food environment. I mean, even the water we've done. Look, COVID is just a reflection of the nature coming back at us for the same thing we do to nature. Like, I know it sounds a little, I don't know what it sounds like, but that's really what it is. I used to say, nurture nature and she will nurture you. You can't misbehave and abuse nature.
Right.
And we're seeing this now.
Yes.
It's not that you're getting a punishment or people are getting a punishment, but the consumption of how we treat everything. And hopefully there'll be a large enough percentage that will go out, and I think there are people who are more aware now of many, many things, including myself. We've all had different levels of developing our awareness. And once that's developed, now we can step forward into a new paradigm in a positive way. And that's a new habit, right? Our new habit of how we're using toilet paper, for example. Remember that whole toilet paper epidemic? Right. The people were buying it out, but you know what? Maybe it really I know it made me look at how I use paper goods. And
it was a bit of a self-reflecting piece.
Oh, everything was self-reflecting. It's not about them. Nobody did it to us. And that's one thing we have to get across. And that's the anxiety. We have to just feel trust, surrender, and you're already okay. You're protected. And once you learn that, and that's what we teach at the Center for Meditation Science, how do you feel that feeling like really grounded and protected? Because then no matter what goes on the outside, of course, we don't want to see that, but it doesn't disturb us on the real core level where we're so anxious that we can't rest, we can't enjoy our family, we can't enjoy our friends, and we can't even enjoy good food.
Right.
The world is for us to live, respect, and then enjoy the fruits. But we must do that all together. And I think the time people are awake now. I think people are more, hey, you know what? I do want to do some self-reflection and work with myself. If you don't work with yourself, no one's going to do it for you. And that's what we all learned. I mean, every one of us.
Yeah. And speaking to working with ourselves, we can torture our minds with things like foods that we like you discussed the story of Linda, how it's late at night, she craves ice cream. And despite knowing that it's going to have an effect on her sleep, her digestion, her effort to lose weight, you say, although she knows her body will suffer, her emotional mind trumps the intelligence. This perspective, it just kind of goes with everything that we're talking about.
It goes with everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
What is it? What's the basis of her issue? It's a habit. It's a habit of the mind. So instead of, let me do a point here on habits. Instead of changing a habit that you want to change, I tell students and people that come in and work with me create a new habit. And that new habit on something that you're positive about. We all have our strengths. I like to see people focus on your strengths, not what you're not doing okay. So if you're doing the ice cream at night, okay, I love ice cream, by the way. And I had a very strong habit that I had to say, whoa, all of the writing is in some way I can relate to, correct? You know, that's just what life is like. But even though you know it's going to cause indigestion and you might have diabetes, for example, you still have to have that piece of chocolate cake. That's a habit of the mind and a habit of the taste bud, actually. The tongue brings us our tastes in many ways. This is good, this is bad, even when it's beyond food. Our taste in clothing, our taste in where we want to go vacationing, our taste in what kind of laptop we want, etc. Taste can drag us down a path, but that taste can be, you step back, you do a breath, and you get back that control, catch your breath, and then say, do I really need that? So when I'm working with diet, which is where I really started originally, I've always told people, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, I used to say, have your cake and eat it too. Do it midday when your digestion could burn it. Don't do it in the middle of the night because you'll just send yourself down illness valley. Don't do it at night. So you work with the mind. You have to massage the mind. And breath is the first start because we get to see if we're having that anxious moment. Just for a moment, when you feel any kind of anxiety, go and say, did I just hold my breath? Or did I just do that? Even at the computer, how many of us hold our breath and then we wonder why we're getting dizzy, or the neck gets stiff, or the hips get stiff?
Yes, the jaw, tight.
Oh, the jaw tightness. I can totally relate to. In fact, yeah. And is it the left side or right side? Are you looking to the right or looking to the left? It depends. I'm looking at you, we're talking, but that's something that we want to do. So there's no bad and good here. We're all in this together, but how could we make it easier and more kind and more community based to work with our anxiety? There's nothing to be ashamed of because every illness has a mental component. So people think, well, I have diabetes, I'm really not anxious. Every illness has a mental component. They're so tied together. We think, I remember, you know, the shame of, oh, I'm depressed, I'm this, dysthymia, or I feel anxiety. No, it's a human condition right now. So how do we work with it so it doesn't disturb us? That's really the key. So we can go on and live a life of freedom and fulfillment with happiness, with joy. And that's really the key.
Yeah. And building those new habits, I want to talk about your acronym for CALM in just a moment, but for journaling, I know that you talk a little bit about journaling. I'm not an avid journaler. So when it comes to building a new habit, that is something that I hear that is helpful.
Well, it can be because of the commitment. So we have to do it in chunks of time. So the best chunk of time is about 10 days for a habit. And for some people, being accountable, writing it down of how they feel, say, I want to practice just 5 minutes of crocodile breathing every day. So write down 10 days, give a little journal. Even if you do a check mark, it gives you accountability. Secondly, though, if you're a person who's carrying a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, journaling can actually, in fact, I have a journal right here. I'll just show the group. I have a journal right here that in the morning, because my creative time is there, I'll just write. I'll write what these creations are because I don't want to carry it all around all day. I want my mind to be free to do other things. So journaling can be very extremely useful. So what I set up in Feeling Good Matters, each chapter that I did, I'm going to change the subtitle on that, by the way, because it's really a manual that goes with how to really live, how to live anxiety free and free of fatigue. And if you journal each day, like there's a practice, journaling meaning this is where I'm going today, this is where I want to go, not the negative. Let's reinforce the positive. Where are we going? What do we do well? What do we enjoy? It's very easy to beat yourself up. Let's forget that. There's enough people outside that will do it. So let's just put down some beautiful things about ourselves each day, some ideas, some ideas of where you want to go, what you want to do. You could today, at this moment, stepping forward, build your life the way you want it.
Mhm.
We're not stuck. Remember brain plasticity. We're not stuck in where we are. We're only stuck here the way we think. And that's the hardest thing to change.
Yes.
That is very hard. It's easier to go out and do a run or do something else than to actually work with. But you don't change the mind through the mind, by the way.
Mhm.
You can't change the mind through thought. You create habits that allow the mind to start working. And the best habit is meditation. And it starts with the breath.
Yeah. And when you say that too, it brings us back to talking about that CALM acronym, because you say it cannot be intellectualized. It needs to come from within, in relating self-acceptance to calm as consciously aware of living in the moment, which I love.
I always remember somebody saying, I think it was Dr. Robert Sabota, he was just saying one day, a brilliant Ayurvedic physician and just author, etc. And he had said, remain calm. I never forget him saying that. And I started using it in the podcast episodes and people liked it. So I just,
Mhm.
but I went a little further with it saying, consciously aware, living in the moment, because when you're in the moment, you're not in a panic state. You're with the breath, and the breath and the mind unite and you're calm. It's as simple as that. It's simple, it sounds simple, but it's a practice. And
Yes.
that's why, everybody could talk about meditation now and do all of this and talk all lofty things, lofty ideals. But unless you have a precise, skillful, and systematic practice with authentic practices, that authentic word always comes to me because people are reaching for little things, but when they call me, I should say, they're the clients that I'm getting. Well, why isn't it working? Because it has to be laid out with time-tested practice. It's not just one person like myself making up a practice and trying to display it. It's none of my work is my own. It's all passed down through lineage. It's
Mhm.
passed down through time-tested practices. And you don't want to own anything anyway, because we don't. It's all out in the universe. So that's really this habit and all of that. So let's all remain calm. There's plenty of opportunity for growth now. There's plenty of opportunity for positivity, and everybody's open to it. So let's get started. I'm glad you invited me uh,
Yes.
again so that we could support the community and share with the community whatever they might want, and write in and ask what you'd like to hear, because we're here to serve each other right now. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Those are all great takeaways. I just feel so uplifted from this conversation. So thank you for that. And if our community wanted to find out more about your courses, about, finding their own authentic practice through you, how could they find you?
They could find me on the internet, susantaylor.org or drsusantaylor.com. They're two different sites. One is more courses and one is more my podcast. That's susantaylor.org. But you could just contact me. That's where people write in for, or even YouTube, Susan Taylor.
Okay.
But you could always write to me. I answer all of them personally. And I also do episodes based on what people write in. I don't make up those titles. I make up the titles, but the concept is what people are asking me now for anxiety. That's what brought us together again. Hey,
Yeah.
I want to know, people said, can I continue more on the breath? So I think in the next couple, I'm going to talk about meditation. I've been getting a lot of inquiries about that.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your insight and sharing with us, Dr. Taylor. We appreciate it more than you know.
Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you. And to everyone at home, be well, and we will see you next time. Bye.